Hi, Brett Warren from Metropole here, and hasn't it been an incredible year for our property markets in 2021? It has soared to heights nobody could have predicted just 12 months ago, with so many grey clouds on the horizon. But what happens next, and what does 2022 have in store for our property market? Only time will tell, I guess, but by understanding some of the key factors that drive our property markets, it can give us a real insight. Factors like interest rate rises, APRA, buyer demand and stock levels are all going to play their part. We're also heading into an election year where people tend to not like to make big decisions on their future as there's a greater level of uncertainty. Adding to that is also a regular X factor that's just around the corner, and most of the time we don't know the way that is, and that could either be positive or negative for property. So let's unpack some of these factors and get an idea of what may lay ahead. I guess the first thing, and probably the most talked about thing at the moment, particularly from the media, is interest rates. Are interest rates going to rise? They seem to have a real bee in their bonnet at the moment, and every second article is about rising interest rates and how it's going to affect things. But if you go straight to the horse's mouth and listen to what the Reserve Governor has said, there's no appetite to raise interest rates next year. And more importantly, there's no appetite until inflation gets between that 2 to 3% band consistently and comfortably between that band for a long period of time. And that's not actually happening or predicted to happen until 2023. So I think we've got a while to play out yet, and I don't think interest rates are going anywhere next year. APRA's the next thing, and APRA's already made a few changes, and I think will be probably likely to be the ones that slow the market if required. They've already put a 0.5% buffer and serviceability margin on our banks and when we're being assessed for borrowing, and things like that could continue to play out as we move forward. I really think nothing will happen though in the first or second quarter until we understand what the market's doing, until we get through that election period. And then if the market is still running away slightly, I think APRA could quite easily step in to slow things down. There's a range of things they could look at doing. The next thing is buyer demand, and buyer demand has been at huge levels throughout 2021, and it's only just starting to come off the boil. It makes sense, right? We didn't have really much else to do. We couldn't travel or go overseas or do the other big ticket items we wanted to do. So property and investing and things like that became a real focus, and buyers' demand went through the roof. And that's now starting to slow and starting to cool in many of our markets around the country. So that could be a positive, and I see that continually slowing and getting back to some normality next year. Stock levels too should return to some normality. They've been 20 to 30% down around the country at various points in time. And that also makes sense because people are in lockdowns. They don't want to sell their great properties in uncertain times. So I think we'll start to see the stock levels start to increase. And together with buyer demand, that should give us a more even market throughout the year. Of course, there's always the X factor, and usually we don't know what that is, but I still feel the coronavirus has still got some way to play out here, and nobody really knows what's happened next there. But I guess international borders could play a big part if that's going to open up, and Melbourne and Sydney get the influx of students and migrants that we had pre-coronavirus. That could really reignite a flowing or a slowing market. And I also think Brisbane will continue to benefit from interstate investors. So there we go, guys. I really think it's going to be just a normal market next year. Interest rates won't do anything. APRA might look to monitor the market. But I do think buyer demand and stock levels will play a key point in returning to normal and getting some equilibrium in the market. And I think most commentators and experts predicting 4 to 6% growth are spot on. And it's going to be a very, very interesting year. But as we said before, nobody knows what happens. Nobody knows what happens next. Thanks for listening.